Merry Christmas! Yes! I am back from my Christmas vacation. Apologies for not being here for the update from the Warhammer community team last week, but I'm going to roll it all together into a super duper update today. Yes! Blimey, there's a lot that's happened since the last time we talked about the old world. So, let's take it one stage at a time. There's a lot of things that I'm very excited about, as you can probably tell, but first things first, army selection. Okay, so they have revealed now how army selection is going to work for Warhammer the Old World. And yes, I know this might be old news. I mean, this is practically last year's news in 3 days' time. But nonetheless, we now know that it's going to be kind of a fusion of two of my favourite editions. It's going to be a mix of 5th edition and 6th edition, which I think is really cool. So what we've got is we've still got the kind of same categories that they had in 6th edition. We have your core, your special, your rare choices, but rather than having a fixed number of units that you can take within each of those sections, instead you have, much like in 5th edition and 4th edition, a percentage of your points that you can spend within each of those sections, which I think is a really nice fusion. This is probably, of all the things they've shown thus far for Warhammer the Old World, the thing I like the most. I mean, I love building army lists. I'm never happier when I'm sat with a roster pad just kind of scribbling down, or battle scribe, you know, again, or play on the Age of Sigmar app, or whatever. But being able to go, okay, cool, I'm going to take, 25% of my army is core and 50% of my army is special. Now, in a Bretonnian army, that might well break down as 3 or 4 units in a 2,000 point army that is special choices, much like you would have as a limitation in 6th edition. But for another army, like for example Night Goblins, imagine being able to go, okay, I've got half my points, presuming the ratios stay the same, half my points to spend on special choices. I'm going to have loads of squigs, I'm going to have, wolf riders, I'm going to have everything. I'm going to have, 25% of my points as rare. I'm going to have trolls, loads of trolls picking their noses and looming around the place going, "Rrr." I think this is great. And within that then, what they've put is they've put limitations on certain aspects. So, for example, in a Bretonnian army, you have to have at least 1 unit of Knights of the Realm for every unit of Knights Errant that you want to have. That's cool. You can only have 1 Duke, and then 1 Baron or Prophetess for every 1,000 points that makes up your army. Again, it's a regulating system, and it's not too different to the limitations they put on characters in 5th edition. So, in 5th edition, you could only ever have 1 Lord choice. You had to have a Lord to be your general, but you could only have the 1. And that's still much the same as what they've put in here. I'm really excited to see what other armies sort of get in terms of their ratios, whether, for example, something like Orcs and Goblins will have, you have to have 50% of your army as core. But what a huge selection of core they've got with Goblins and Night Goblins and Savage Orcs and Orcs and Wolf Riders and Snotlings and God knows what else. The other thing that they've put in there, which I think is an interesting little kind of tantalizer, is allies are back. Now, this is something that we had back in 5th edition, but they got rid of in 6th edition. 6th edition, the only kind of allied stuff you could take was Dogs of War units, which was still cool because Dogs of War are awesome, and I'm hoping we see them again. But it meant that the days of being able to go, oh, well, I'm going to take a Skaven army, but this Skaven army is a Cripple Peak Skaven army, so it's allied with Nagash, and we're going to have some skeletons in there and some wights or a wraith or something to lead them. Those days were behind us for a long time. Or, going, oh, I've got an Empire army, but I've got some dwarves in here, because, the dwarves were a huge part of the Empire. There are literally Imperial dwarves who live in manling territories and pay their taxes to the manling Emperor and go around collecting taxes on behalf of the manling Emperor in some cases, because who better to be a tax collector than a dwarf? That is back, is my kind of thing I'm building towards, I suppose. So, as well as the various limitations of having, so much of your army as characters, so much of your army as core, you can have up to 25% of your army as allies, or allied units from the same army, but that come from one of the kind of units of renown, essentially, armies of renown. So, for example, you could go, I'm going to take this army of Brionne, and it's going to have, Brionne, the Duke of Brionne, and it's going to have a load of Brionne peasants and a unit of Knights of the Realm of Brionne. But there is a unit of Knights Errant that are travelling on the way to the Crusades from the Crusading list, who are going to join my army as allies. And therefore, then you'd get whatever special rules the Army of Renown gets for that unit, which is a nice way of adding some character to your army. But the real thing that you can do is you can go, okay, I've got this army of Quiddell. And I'm going to have some wood elves in it because they've come out of Athelda End to lend a hand. Yes, that sounds really cool to me. I'm really looking forward to the variety of armies that we'll get to see again as a result of being able to take allies. And interestingly, it looks as though there are going to be different degrees of allies as well. So, for example, dwarves are marked as being suspicious allies of the Bretonnian manlings. I guess because, well, who can trust anyone who doesn't spend enough time on their own legs when they're sort of zooming around on these four-legged quadruped things that are far more suited for pulling pit carts. That's kind of the main stuff I've taken away from the army list building stuff. I think it's really cool that we've been able to see how things are going to be looking, and we've got reassurance as well that all of this will also be viable in terms of the PDF army list. So even if you don't have, say you've got a high elf army, but you want to ally in something from one of the kind of PDF lists that's not a good example. Let's take a better example. Say you've got a chaos army, but you want to ally in some rat men. Yeah, you can do that with the new list. It looks as though, I'm presuming that Skaven are going to be allies for chaos, because why wouldn't they be? They have been in all the previous editions that had allies. But equally, you could do, a beasts army with orc allies. Sounds really cool. I'm really, really excited to see how it's going to pan out. Let's move on, because there's still a lot of stuff to cover. So, after we got this kind of whole article about how you build your army and, the reassurance about different levels of army lists and all the rest, we got Boxing Day, a great smacking big present. We got to see, I know they'd been teased a little bit by some people who'd seen them before Christmas because there'd been some leaks, because it happens, but we got to see both of these starter army boxes, and this is a little different to what we've seen in all the previous editions. In all the previous editions, it's been 2 armies in a box with a rulebook. Even in 40k at the moment, the 10th edition starter box, it's Marines and Tyranids in a box with a rulebook. They are trying something, it would seem, different, and I'm intrigued to see how this... I think it's going to go great guns. I'm certainly going to go and snatch one of these up, assuming that they don't just all disappear the moment they go on sale. They are doing an army in a box with your rulebook and templates and dice and whippy sticks. Yes, it says it's going to come with classic red whippy sticks as well. You won't be an antique. Well, you will still be an antique, but you'll be an antique that has younger kin that you can kind of lord it over and go, I remember in my day you came with 2 armies in a box. We get let's deal with first of all, the Tomb King army box. So, from this we get a whole bunch of models that we had previously released that are going to be re-released. So we get, I think it's 40 skeleton infantry with kind of sword and shield, another 40 skeleton infantry with bows, 16 skeleton horsemen that can be assembled either as heavy cavalry with shields and spears, or light cavalry with bows, and 3 chariots, and the brand spanking new character set, which comes with either a Tomb King on a bone dragon and then a Hierophant on foot, or a Hierophant on bone dragon and a Tomb King on foot. Or presumably there's nothing to stop you from dismounting one of the riders from the chariots and sticking your Tomb King in one of the chariots and going, I've got a Tomb King on chariot, ha ha ha. Depends, I suppose, on what the minimum unit size is for chariots. If it's still 3, then you'll need to get some more chariots to stick your Tomb King in, because you'll need those 3 to be the minimum unit size. Anyway, that's a hefty chunk of stuff. I mean, I don't know how much the box sets are going to cost. Varying thoughts online at the moment are ranging anywhere between £150 to £200. I would be happy at 150. I think 200 I would kind of go, oh, that's a bit much. But I'd still probably find a way to buy it. Let's look at the Bretonnian box then. So again, so this looks like it's 2 of the classic Bretonnian battalion sets smushed together, then a unit of Pegasus Knights thrown away. Essentially, in the old battalion set, you got like a unit of men-at-arms, unit of archers, unit of knights, and some Pegasus Knights. In this box, we get 2 blocks of 8 knights, so that's 2 of the classic Bretonnian knight sets. I think it's 36 men-at-arms, and then 32 archers, and 3 Pegasus Knights. And the shiny new Lord on Pegasus model, which I said in one of my previous videos, I think also doubles as the King Luon Orc Slayer model, or if not, has certainly been painted as that in one of the previous miniature pictures that they released. But yeah, so this is another hefty chunk of stuff. There's a lot of people who, there's always people who are whinging on the internet. There are a lot of people who whinged and looked at this, because it's advertised as 2 lots of 12 50 points. So it's 2 armies of exactly 1,250 points. Now, I'm either very impressed that they went, hey, if you take this and this and this, you get exactly 1,250 points. What I suspected is if you go, hey, if you get this and this and this, and then you configure the war gear just right, then you get 250 points. And that's how it's come about. But yeah, there's been people whinging on the internet saying, oh no, we're back in the days of 8th edition where you have to have huge armies. If that's 1250, God knows what another 850 points is going to look like. 750 points. I can't do maths. I've told you in previous videos I can't do maths. God knows what 750 points is going to look like. You're going to have a huge army. Well, I have to spend lots of money to buy lots of toys. Boo-hoo-hoo. I've looked at it, I've worked it out, and I think I'm not the only person out there who's done that, but I quickly ran the points for what you get in the Tomb King's box into the Battle Scribe for 6th edition, left out the dragon, because I don't know what the cost of dragon would be back in 6th edition, they didn't have them. But quick rundown on it gave me the Tomb King's box. Even if I gave the Tomb Prince like 100 points worth of magic items, it comes in about 1,188, which isn't far off 1250. And if we didn't give him 100 points of magic items, but instead threw a dragon in the box, it's probably about 1,250, 1,300 points in 6th edition. The Bretonians was easier because they've got nothing in there that they didn't have in 6th edition. So I just totaled everything up, threw it all into a calculator, didn't give them any kind of magic banners or anything, but did give the Lord on Pegasus 100 points worth of magic items and 1,218. So it's pretty damn close to what you would have had in 6th edition. And I don't think anybody can accuse Games Workshop in 6th edition of trying to force people to have huge armies. If it is a problem, then all I would say is we don't yet know what the approximate average game size will be. I mean, I'm assuming 2,000 points because that's what it's been in most editions, and that is even now what it is in 40k 10th edition. The average kind of estimated tournament game size at the very least is 2,000 points. But there's nothing to stop you from going, hey, let's play 1,500. This year we did my 5th edition campaign event. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the video. It's a lot of fun. We did 2,000 points, and it was actually probably a little bit too much. The previous year, so last year's tournament, 5th edition campaign weekend, we did 1,500, and it was actually about right. So, I mean, that's what I'm planning on going back to next year, unless, of course, we all decide to play Warhammer the Old World. I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to stick loyally to 5th edition for the event, or get everybody playing Old World. I think it will depend on how many of the army books have been released, and how many of the PDFs are available by the time we look to play the campaign. But my point, which I had somewhere back there, was this. There is nothing to stop you from playing 1,500 point games. If you're worried about having too big an army, don't be. Play a game size that matches your budget. Turn around to your friends and say, hey, I don't have enough to play against your whole army. How about we play a special scenario where you've got twice as many points as me? Or how about we swap armies? Or whatever. Play the game how you want to have fun. What I would say, though, is I don't think, certainly on a points level, that this is unbalanced. I think that it's quite cool that you get an entire army in a box. I'm very much looking forward to getting a Tomb King army, because I've already got a Bretonian army, so I don't need another one. I'm very much looking forward to getting myself a Tomb King army, and that Bone Dragon, I think, is definitely a lovely model I can't wait to paint, albeit I'm tempted to leave the wings off and just leave it as some kind of giant waddling crocodile-looking monster. Those 2 army boxes, though, came with a whole bunch of other information that was released on Boxing Day, including the fact that we're going to need 2 books. Now, again, a lot of people are going, oh no, this is another money grab by Games Workshop. Toys out of the pram, I'm going to burn my army at the barbecue. How dare you insist I buy books? Instead of needing to buy a single, like, £20, £30 army book for every army, Games Workshop are giving you 4 armies in a single book. And then they're going to release what looks very much to be like a slim kind of portfolio style, which I'm assuming maybe £10, £12, supplement that will give you some other cool stuff. And we'll talk about those supplements in a minute. But yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting 4 army books for the price of 1. And if I do want to use my entire collection, if I want to use my Orc army and my Dwarves and my Bretonians, then I guess I'll need both books. But I could just buy 1 book and use 1 army to begin with, and buy the other book later when I decide to use her. Or I could buy 1 book, and Michael could buy the other book, and then we could swap. So he could buy the nice guy book, and I could buy the bad guy book, and we can play games against each other and swap books, as and when we need to. I think it's cool that they're getting one of them's been released in particular under the name of Ravening Hordes, because anyone who remembers back in kind of the early days of 3rd and 4th edition, Ravening Hordes is a classic piece of Games Workshop branding. But I also think it's cool that you're getting essentially all the rules you need for one side or the other side in a single book. that's my 2 halfpence worth on that. What I want to touch on now is these little kind of portfolio army books. So these, like I say, they seem almost to be the akin of like these, like the 3rd edition codices, where I mean this was £4 back in the day. There's no way these books are going to be like £4 now. But this one was not a complete book. You needed the Space Marine army book in order to play Space Wolves. So you paid £8 for the Space Marine book, and then you bought this to add your Space Wolvie flavour. First things first is you don't need to buy these special army books in order to play the army. You just need either the Army of Renown, the Ravening Horde book, or the good guy version of the book, and that's it. That's got your army in. And if you're not playing one of those books, if you're playing one of the PDF lists, you don't even need that. I mean, Games Workshop are giving away Vampire Counts and Skaven and Dark Elves for free, basically, and Ogres and Lizard Men and whole bunches of stuff. Chaos Dwarves, we've been told. The Army of Hashut. Got a shout out. Chaos Dwarves are going to have rules for this. My point is, you don't need the pamphlet if you want to play the game. You can play the game with just the core book, an army, and either the light side or the dark side book or PDF. But if you want to add some flavour to your army, then they're going to take you to flavour. They're going to take you to flavour country. We're going to get Armies of Renown, and we've got a couple of examples that we're just kind of throwing out here. So we've got the Errantry Wars list, kind of Crusade list. We've got the Mortuary Cult for Khemri. We've got the Royal Army of Nakara. So again, we've got kind of some examples of what kinds of lists we might say. And these, I'm assuming, are not the only ones. I'm assuming it's not just 2 different kind of themed lists. I'm hoping for 3, maybe 4 themed lists for each book. But the other thing it mentions these books will contain are 2 very cool words, and they are special characters. Yes, special characters. I said way back in the summer that I was hoping that we were going to see special characters for Warhammer the Old World. I even debated about who those characters might be, and it has now been confirmed. Now, as I'm not going to digress back into what special characters we're going to get too much. Certainly the Green Knight, I'm imagining, the Fey Enchantress. We know that some of the models that have been released have names, so I'm assuming those are going to be special characters that we'll see for Bretonia, that we'll see for Khemri. We've got, this new model that was revealed on Boxing Day, the Herald of Cetra, and we're assuming the Cetra himself will also be in there, therefore. I'm guessing maybe Apophis will get a re-release, and we'll see him in there. But the point is, we are getting special characters back, more than 1, for each army, and I'm really excited by what that means, because not only does it mean we're presumably getting the new characters that we've seen mentioned, and perhaps some of the older ones that were relevant for the time, but it means that as the game goes forward, as the other armies that feature in those 2 big army books get their flavourful army book kind of pamphlets, we will get to see other special characters, potentially new special character models for the old world, and that's a really cool thing. I can only assume, for example, that some of the characters who I'm going to touch on this in a minute, who featured in the interactive map, some of the characters such as the Empress of Westerland or the Lord of the Middenland are going to feature when we get the Empire pamphlet. But likewise, I'm assuming we might get a whole bunch of Orc characters, because at the end of the day, the Orc characters that have been released thus far, most of them weren't alive at the point that this kind of the 2276 that the game is set. So when we get the Orc book, loads of cool Orky characters. Who can't get excited about that? We might get like a new Night Goblin character, or a whole bunch of awesome Orc war bosses. We just don't know. Beastmen, I mean, Morgor's probably going to get an appearance, but there might be a whole slew of other Beastman characters. Wood Elves, yes, I'm expecting Ariel and Orion, but we might get all manner of characters, including the ones who were featured in my 2276 video. That's the next big kind of Ben exploding excitement thing that I need to cover. It's probably worth me moving on now then to the final thing that we've kind of got. So in the aftermath of them going to go, here's the 2 release army boxes. And also, I should probably mention, during the course of this, they also unveiled there is a new Black Library novel set in the world that was, written by Graham McNeil, and it's Bretonians, and the cover looks amazing, and it's a rescue story about a bunch of disparate knights blitzing off to try and rescue a knight who's been captured, by the undead, a hostage rescue mission from Kemri. I mean, that's going to be so cool. And the fact they got Graham McNeil, one of my favourite writers who writes for Black Library, to write for this. Apologies to anybody else I know who writes for Black Library who I didn't just mention there, but Graham McNeil, who wrote the Ambassador Chronicles, one of my all-time favourite Black Library novel series set in the old world. Yeah, really excited. Graham McNeil, who wrote the story of Sigmar. Yeah, can't breathe. Okay. Finally, just from the cover of that book, it looks as though one of the knights, the knight riding on Pegasus, is a lady. I mean, again, it's awesome to see them kind of putting some more kind of diversity into this, but having her just casually thrown on the cover as if she's just, oh yeah, that's part of Bretonia now. Yeah, you know, Rapance de Lyonesse, she wasn't a one-off. Anybody can be a knight. It ties back into the next thing I'm going to say. We have got the classic 5th edition. I know I said when I was talking about Bretonia that there were 2 different versions of Bretonia. There's 5th edition Bretonia, which is light and fluffy and everybody is noble and it's knights as they should be. And there's 6th edition Bretonia, which is knights as they really were in our world, where everybody gets treated a bit crappy. The Code of Chivalry, they did a whole, Bretonia lore article on the Warhammer community site, and if you want to check into Bretonia lore, I've got a Bretonia lore video. Go back and watch it. It's me gibbering through the history of Bretonia whilst trying to paint some Bretonian Duke. The Code of Chivalry that they've thrown up is the Code of Chivalry as it was written by Nigel Stillman in the classic 5th edition army book. It is literally a knight defends those who can't defend themselves. A knight is courteous at all times. A knight is an embodiment of all that is good, rather than a clean my boots, you filthy peasant. Oh, he must be royal. How can you tell? He's not got mud all over him. I'm paraphrasing for YouTube's privacy policies there. Yeah, we have got classic Bretonia, where literally anybody can earn the right to be a knight by earning their spurs and proving their worth. That's the version of Bretonia we've got, and it says anybody. When I get my hands on the new shiny Pegasus model, I've already got the classic metal Pegasus model, so I don't really need to paint it up as another Duke on Pegasus. I'm already thinking a Paladin on Pegasus, and if it comes with a lady head option, that's definitely going on there. If not, I will grab like a Sister of Battle head or something and slap that on there. She is definitely getting painted up to match the cover art of the new Graham McNeil novel. Right, let's move on. So, after the Bretonian lore, we got the unveiling of the new Old World, theoldworld.com. If you've not gone and check it out, go as soon as you finish watching this video, go and check out theoldworld.com. It's really cool. But one of the things that they've got on there is finally the full Old World. This new gorgeous map that they've drawn, that they've been teasing us with for the last 3 years. Going, oh look, here's a little bit of map we've drawn. Here it is in all its glory. And it's interactive. You can click on it. What's interesting to me at the moment is it's not all interactive. Like, there are bits that are very clearly intended to be clicked on, but at the moment you can't click on them. So almost all of the high elf shields, there is one high elf shield that is clickable. I'll let you figure out which one it is for yourselves, but all the rest of the high elf shields that are on there at the moment are not clickable. The orc shields, none of them are clickable. The dwarf shields, none of them are clickable. The chaos ones, again, you get my point. At the moment, the stuff that is clickable and therefore interactive and opens up and brings a little sidebar up that tells you something about whatever you just clicked on is the Bretonia sort of background, the Empire background, Kemri's background, and the Border Princes. And what I want to just dive into is I've spent some time today playing around with that, and I've gone around and clicked on, ooh, what's that do? Click on that. Ooh, what? Hovered my mouse across things. Is there anything else that's hiding in here that's clickable? Ooh, that is. Click. I want to pick out the core things that piqued my interest. This is not going to be a complete rundown of what additional lore we've learned about the old world since they released this map. I'll save that for another time. This is the immediate stuff that has piqued my interest. I'm going to start at the south and work my way north, and we'll just kind of go from there. So, first things first, down in the Southlands, we have Kemri. And there is a whole bunch of stuff which is mostly a reduplication of the background material that featured in the 6th, 7th and 8th edition Kemri books. Yes, Cedra is still there, ruling over Kemri, and there is, Numas over here and Qatar there, and fine. The things that I have picked out that piqued my interest from this are the Black Pyramid of Nagash is clickable. okay, I suppose you couldn't really talk about the background of Khemri without talking a little bit about Nagash, because at the end of the day, he is the reason why they're all there in the manner in which they are. But beyond that, Nagashizar is also present on the map. It's not clickable, but they've gone to the trouble not only of featuring it, but even putting nice little kind of green warp stony shading around it. Now, what is clickable is what's referred to as the Black Tower, and this is just slightly south of the Black Pyramid down in Khemri. It had another name previously in the Warhammer background. Back when I was first getting into Warhammer, it was still undead. It was known as the Tower of Arcan. And actually, when you do click on it, it does bring up a little bit about Nagash's most although they don't name him, they refer to him as the Necromancer's most dreaded lieutenant. But it makes me wonder. Nagash's ear is on there, the Black Pyramid is on there, the Tower of Arcan is on there. Do we think that maybe Arcan the Black, who we know was active during this period, might make an appearance in the Khemri book? I don't know. We won't know until the Khemri flavour pamphlet is released. But it would be very cool if amongst the different themed army lists you could have in there was, oh, and by the way, you can have Arcan the Black. And here is a made to order of the classic Arcan the Black flying, made out of an undead manticore chariot. That would be really cool. Moving slightly northwards, the next thing that we encounter is the Border Princes. And they've really kind of lavished detail on this. And there's a few different locations within the Border Princes that I just want to pick out. What I am hopeful this Border Prince detail means is I'm hopeful that after we've had the Khemri book and the Bretonnian book, maybe they will give us a Border Princes book. It would be cool if it was like a first campaign book, much like they did campaign books for Adeptus Titanicus, much like they've done campaign books for the Horus Heresy. It would seem on brand and in line with the work that they've done in other sort of assorted games to release a campaign book with a setting and a whole bunch of unique kind of characters and rules and units and stuff for the Border Princes, because I don't understand otherwise why they have laboured so long and so hard putting so much detail, and it is chock full of detail. I'm not even going to go through everything on this. I'm going to talk about that again in a future video. But just 5 bits of information I want to pick out from the Border Princes because of what I think it might mean for the game going forward. So here goes. So kind of count them down 1 to 5. So number 1, okay, we have Ortegata. Ortegata is the sort of domicile of one of the lords of the Border Princes. This is Lord Ortegata, and it's just basically mentioned that he is been in the Border Princes for 70 years. No one knows what crime it is that led to him being there. But what is interesting is he is Estalian. Estalia is basically the Warhammer the Old World version of Spain, and it's been mentioned at various points in the background. The goddess Mamidia is worshipped there. She has provided, sort of the Knights of the Blazing Sun originate from there. The only real Estalian characters we have ever seen, though, was there was Pirazzos Loch Legion, who were made up of a sort of a mixture of Estalian nobles and warriors who travelled over to the Old World, to the Lustria, and went in hunt of gold there and got into a lot of trouble amongst the kind of temples of the Slan mage priests. We haven't really seen much in the way of Estalia before, and it's interesting to me that they've gone to the trouble of making not 1 but 2. In fact, there's another prince in the Border Princes who are both from Estalia. Calling that out in particular just makes me wonder, are we going to get perhaps some specialist Estalian units? Are we going to get Estalian pikemen or Estalian arquebuses or something? I don't know, but I'm really intrigued that they made this one of the choices they made in the Border Princes. Moving on though, the next one I want to bring up is Tordorno. Tordorno is the home of Fredo, a merchant prince from Tylea, who is now in hiding from his numerous enemies. Again, it could just be them adding flavour and some background to the Border Princes, but it's interesting to me that they've specifically called out one of the princes to be Tylean. Tylea, of course, being their version of Italy in Warhammer the Old World. I am keeping everything crossed that the presence of Estalia and Tylea in the Border Princes means that if they do release, and this is all a big kind of what if wish listing, but if they do release a Border Princes book with Border Prince army lists, maybe this will be how they re-release some of my all-time favourite models the Dogs of War models. Imagine they re-released the Al-Qitani Fellowship, because, I mean, the eBay prices will just tumble. They're thinking, oh, it's a made-to-order, I can made-to-order all of the Dogs of War models I ever wanted. But release them not as the classic Dogs of War character units they were, but as more generic pikemen, heavy pikemen, elite leopard pikemen that are immune to fear, or, crossbowmen, marksmen, duelists, heavy crossbowmen, heavy cavalry. It would be an awesome way to reuse some of the most beautiful models that were ever produced back in 5th edition, but re-release them not as the specialist Dogs of War character units they were, but as mercenary units that fight for the Tyleans, the Stallions, and the other Border Prince units that are featured in this kind of lush piece of background. Yeah, okay, so that's probably one of my big points from this. But number 2. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 features the city of Aquilena, and Aquilena is named after the daughter of Baron Carard, an infamous Bretonnian exile who led a crusade into the land of the dead, earning him the ire of Cetra. Now, getting a call out to Cetra here is eminently possible that this is going to tie into the background of the Border Princes, but what I think is cool is that they've specifically, this isn't even the first, there is also, I think, the Crimson Maid, another Bretonnian exile in the Border Princes. Both of them, though, are female leading characters, and again I think it's just a nice move by Games Workshop to remove some of the kind of male-centric element that dominated Warhammer for so many years. I'm really hopeful that this perhaps means that when we get our hands on like the Pegasus kit or the Knights kits, that there will be like they've been doing with Stormcast, like they've been doing with other units, we will get a mixture of different genders in the set, so that you can make an army that is really kind of representative of whatever you want. That's really cool to me. I want to move on to the next thing that features, and this wasn't one of the big kind of showy shields that you could see. This is something you had to sneak your mouse around and click on. I'll let you see if you can spot it on the map. We're going to make a visit to the Citadel of Myrmidia. Now, I mentioned Myrmidia before. She's obviously the goddess of the sun that came out of Astalia. The Knights of the Blazing Sun worship Myrmidia, but they've actually made it a location hidden within the Border Princes, the last keep before you venture south into kind of the wilds and the wastelands south of the Border Princes. The Badlands, as I've repeatedly used for my 5th edition campaign weekends. It is interesting that they have made it a specific location, and I am hopeful, because I love the classic Knights of the Blazing Sun upgrade set they did, that this might mean that we get a whole new Knights of the Blazing Sun box set. It would be awesome if you could do an entire army of Myrmidia based out of the Citadel of Myrmidia in the Border Princes. Yeah, that's number 4. That's a really cool point. However, none of this is as cool as point number 5. So, a little preface to this. It has been established when they set the rules for Warhammer the Old World that the only undead we were going to be seeing were long dead, dry and dusty Tomb Kings. That being said, one of the locations that features in the Border Princes is the Castle of Harkon, ruled over by Lord Harkon, a mysterious knight who is not seen much during the day, and the symbol on the shield is a red grail with 3 blood droplets falling into it. And of course, as I said in one of my previous videos, one of the characters we know was around and kicking during this period was Luther Harkon, who nobody really knows which bloodline he belongs to, and it's always kind of just been one of those elements of who is this mysterious vampire lord that actively features during this time period that the game is active, and lo and behold, he has a castle, a citadel, down in the Border Princes. Oh, I only hope that, although they've gone, the vampire counts, you get some PDF rules. Oh, by the way, here's the Border Princes book with an undead list for doing undead, but with a vampire lord. That would be so cool. We can only hope and pray. So that's kind of the Border Princes. There are a couple more locations I want to hit on, though, moving slightly further northward. So firstly, let's move north into the Empire. I'm going to do a whole video at some point about the Empire once we have more information about it, because it is probably one of the primary locations that the story and the narrative is centred throughout the kind of time period of 2276. It's the Empire is shown here divided into 4 provinces, essentially. So it's kind of the lesser kind of state lands that had the elector counts, but then within those there's the greater province that make up kind of the 4 claimants to the imperial throne. I want to just focus on a couple of little points from this. Firstly, the area of Westerland. So this is long before Marienburg bought its independence, literally forked over cash and bought its independence from the Empire. There is an empress, or would-be empress, that rules over the province of Westerland, Marienburg, the wasteland, and the western provinces of the human empire. And it's cool to see it as, literally, as Westerland. I'm really excited to see what kind of stuff they might get and how perhaps the different flavour of that army might compare, for example, to what I'm assuming is only the heavily White Wolf-laden kind of Middenland army, or the more kind of Imperial capital Reichland one. But the other thing that I want to just touch on for the kind of the Empire map before I move on is this. Krupp! Lumping Krupp's great-great-great-grandfather, apparently Lord of the Mootland at this point, with his own heraldry and everything. Oh, that's so cool! And it's a chicken! Yeah, I'm just loving the idea that the halflings hopefully means we'll get a whole bunch of plastic halfling models, because there isn't any at the moment, or maybe they'll re-release the metal halfling models, I don't know. But the fact that they have a very prominent heraldry, that perhaps there will be an Elder of the Moot, Elder Krupp. Krupp the Sixth, I think. Is it Krupp the Sixth? Let's have a good look. Krupp the Sixth. There's been 5 previous Krupps. It can only suggest that when by the time Lumpen Krupp down the pub decided to set himself up as a mercenary, his family had truly fallen on hard times compared to their dynasty 3 centuries previously. The other thing that is hiding in the corner of the map on this is, this of course is after the end of the War of the Vampire Counts. It's towards, about 100 years after the end of the War of the Vampire Counts. But Drakwold is specifically featured as a province. Now, Drakwold was the old name before Sylvania kind of gained its independence. Drakwold was Sylvania, parts of Averland, parts of kind of the southern provinces, even had part of Solland, were all part of this kind of southern sort of empire of the east, rivaled the Ostermark, really. It is fascinating to me to see Drakwold specifically get a call out on here, whilst I am assuming we're still not going to get any kind of vampires or anything coming out of Sylvania, because anything that was undead at that point had been decapitated and buried in a swamp. I wonder whether or not there will still be some kind of Drakwold army list when the Empire get their pamphlet. That would be something that would be really cool to see. I want to move on now to one final thing on the map. I'm not going to do the entirety of the history of Bretonnia again, because there is so much information revealed about Bretonnia on this map that I think it's probably worthy of a video all in itself. But there is one thing I want to talk about that's been revealed on that, and that is this. Mulsanne. Mulsanne has its heraldry displayed here, and it notably states who the Duke of Mulsanne is at this time. It is the noble Duke Maldred. Now, anybody who's watched my Bretonnia lore video will know that Maldred has a huge part to play in the history of Bretonnia. Maldred is essentially the character who in 28 years' time, from the point that we're currently sat now, will declare himself the rightful king of Bretonnia in the what is known as the Affair of the False Grail. Will try and sort of seize control of the entire kingdom and drag it down into chaos with the assistance of a sorceress companion. And there's a whole huge story that I've already talked about in my lore video that I just urge you to go back and listen to. But what is interesting to me is that it reminded me of this. Maldred in 2298, in the Affair of the False Grail, murders the rightful king of Bretonnia, Jules the Just, and attempts to seize control of Bretonnia using this whole False Grail. We've already know that King Luon Orcslayer is the king here, and I'd already noted the fact that he must be in his 70s by this point, and that's if he took the throne as a baby back in 2102 or whatever, when it first... And I don't think that's the case. I think he may be, kicking on 100 by this point, if he was active in his 30s, back when he declared the War of Errantry against the Orcs, back in 2102. But that means that between now and the end 2298, he both has to die, hand over the throne to a king who has to become Jules the Just, in time to be assassinated by Maldred. There's a whole load of story there waiting to be unpacked, and I've said before, I think Games Workshop are going to be using the old world to advance the storyline through at a steady pace over the years. I think we're going to build our way up perhaps in the next 5-10 years to the Great War against Chaos, which means we're going to cover the intervening 3 decades in the next 5 or 10 years, I would say. Which means I wonder if we're going to get a whole False Grail Civil War campaign pack at some point that will centre around Maldred and the supporters of Jules the Just and his daughter and the rightful claimants to the throne and everything that the presence of Maldred just casually thrown in here as the Duke of Mousson potentially implies. I think you can tell I'm so much stuff to go through in this video. I've actually worn myself out. I've worn out of energy, which is somewhat fitting for what is my last video of the year. Thank you very much for everybody who joined me. I don't know if anyone watched my New Year's resolution video at the beginning of this year, but I set myself the challenge of doing at least one video a week, and I have now, at the point of making this, done that. So I'm relatively chuffed with myself. I think I'm going to have to do a New Year's video setting myself a new challenge for next year. But in the meantime, thank you to everybody who's been on with me on this journey this year. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed. Thank you to everybody, the regular commenters and the new commenters who joined me in a sort of a steady chat in the comments on each of these videos. I love kind of seeing your comments and joining in kind of the conversations and the different kind of ideas that come up. And thank you for all the supportive and lovely comments that I get on there. If you're not already subscribed, well, why not? Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of the crazy stuff that I've got coming next year. You haven't seen. Let me put it this way. If you've enjoyed this year's videos, and I hope you've enjoyed them as much as I've enjoyed making them, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. As ever, I will catch you next time. Bye for now.